Hello, this is Max Drake. So coming back to where we were before, we got some data, we got the downloaded stuff. Now what do we do with it now that we've got it? So one, we're going to convert from JSON to CSV. Now in some ways we could just take it from the JSON and do it into pandas and do a lot of the stuff that we're going forward and just do it straight and leave it in pandas, but I don't want to do that, and I'll explain why. And at the moment we've got a few things happening. So let's just look at the data and see what we have to do further manipulating. So we've got to do a bit of data cleaning on that and setting it up so that it's useful, so that we can use it in other things that we're doing. So if we go back to the code, the next part that we're going to do is that we're going to take that file and we're going to convert it into a CSV. One of the reasons why I wanted to do it into CSV format is because that's what everybody else is comfortable with. Another thing as well, if you've got a whole lot of things happening in data frames and halfway through something breaks, you don't know what's happened. It suddenly breaks and it says, oh, something happened about there. But you can't follow the data. So what I find I do is that I write to file an awful lot, so that when I find it breaks with a line, I'll put the write to data frame, the one before, and then I'll be able to check it. I'll write the data frame to a CSV file so that I can actually look and see what's actually being produced. So a lot of times it's not what I think is the data frame's doing, it's doing something else. And I suddenly think, oh dear, no wonder I done that. So the first thing is to actually get the, so this one here, we're going to open, we've got to open for which file we're going to open, and then we're going to give it an output file of some description coming through here, and we're talking about which controller it is through here. So this one here is done on an individual basis because we're trying to split the files into 3 separate files at this point in time. We're going to have an Aqua one, and we're going to have 2 different Hydro ones. Now the thing with the 2 Hydro ones, if we actually look at the Hydro one through here, we've got this HY for humidity, we've got CO2, we've got LP, which I think is the lamp, and we've got TP, which is temperature, and a couple of the other ones through there. So there's certain headers that they have, and that's fine to have those headers, and at this point in time having the same headers in different files is not a problem. But when ultimately it's being pushed up to we've got to think what we're going to be doing with that data. So when we push it up onto the database, we're going to put them into a table. So we're going to say, well, this is from this controller and this is from this controller, and they can actually have the same titles or the same column headers and all the things. But if we suddenly saying I want to compare, so take me some information from this table, which is this controller, and take me some information from this one and join them together, you've suddenly got these column headers which have the same name on them. So you suddenly think, well, which is which? So you've got to differentiate. So at this point in time, having the controller, we know which it is because it's in this file here. But when you actually just get a couple of columns side by side and they're both called TP or something, or both called HY for humidity, you suddenly think, well, which one belongs to which one? Because this one's reading weird and this one's reading okay. And so it gets confusing. So we've got to start thinking about the ultimate things. And so this is why splitting them out into different files is that suddenly we can start transforming headers, because our ultimate aim is to go and put them into a database so that we can actually query the database and be able to do things with them. So what would we want to do with something like that? So one of the things that we can do with the things is that we can do a report. So this here is, I think they're calling it Looker now, but it's actually Google Data Studio. So here, this is reading the database, and this is one that I've set up. I'll just go back to view on that. And I can come down here into this window here, and I can say, give me show me what the temperature is between July and 11th of September. Apply, and it'll go and read the database and bring out the information here. Now this is actually only reading one, which is actually the aqua one, so to do with the water temperature, but I could also have the hydro ones on here as well. But if they were both called, you see, like, in fact the aqua one was also called TP for temperature, so I actually had to add an A underscore to the beginning of that so that I know which one it pertains to. So this is one of the things that you're doing. Ultimately, when they're in the files at this point in time, having any old name of the header is fine, but when we actually get that data into the database and then we're pulling it out to look at it or display it or do something with it, we want to be clear on what we're looking at. We want to know, is that for water or is that for thing? It seems a bit low for, you know, air temperatures and stuff like that. So this is something that we need to look at. So ultimately we will have a dashboard, so we need to make sure that we're telling the story that we want. So just be aware that when we're doing the little baby steps, so this is why actually having the little baby steps and breaking these steps down, instead of doing this one and just in one script at the beginning, just push everything up, do it in baby steps and doing it. So this one here, we're loading our JSON file. Now we know that our JSON file is loading, and then we're going to put it into a data frame. And then it's got this explode items so that it actually allows them to be tabled. So if we look at the JSON file, they're all under items. So we've got to break these out, and it uses its explodes. I'm not that comfortable with JSON myself. I get it, but my first reaction is convert it to CSV so I can actually use it in Excel or something. Is my feeling about it. So I'll use them, but I'm not overly confident with them. So mine was actually, so what I needed to do. So we're doing something through here, and we're getting the information, and then we're getting the series and stuff like that so that we can spit it out to a CSV. So that's all this one here does. It's going to take that one. So we're going to take the hydro, we're going to look at the number 7, so the date is a 7, and we got the first of the 2003, so that we got 2023 first, so we got the right day for that particular file, and then we're going to spit it out. So at this point in time, I suppose I could have done all 3 data frames, and it just would have just said that's the date, go and find each of those files and actually just split them out. So if I run this one now, shift and run, there it's actually doing the frame and showing you what is actually coming out. And if we just go and look at the that file through there, there is the information that we've got. Now what it's also done, I think that particular one through there, let's just have a look at that. No, sorry, that isn't the file that we're looking at. This is the file that we've got. So this is the file that we've got. We've got all of the other things. We've got the Mac, we've got the TP, we've got all of these other ones here, and they've just got the normal thing. So we've just changed it from JSON into a CSV file. So now we've got the CSV file. We're suddenly saying, well, we don't want the Mac one, we don't want this, some of these other ones, and we don't want this index column through here. We actually want our date to be the index column, and we also want the date to be on the hour. So we've got to shift everything over slightly. So that's this one here. So this was just a very simple script. It just takes your thing, switches it over, and turns it into a CSV. So now we've got the CSV, we can actually do some normalizing. So on this one here, we're now reading that CSV file again that we outputted through there, and then and here's another little funny that I actually had. I don't think I mentioned this before, I may have. When the controller is here in New Zealand, and in New Zealand we use degrees centigrade, we go on their metric system. The company that actually makes these controllers and everything, they're in the States, so they're still in degrees Fahrenheit. So what actually happens when we actually pulled the card out and actually plugged it into the computer, all of the temperatures were in degrees C. When I did an API call and brought everything back, and if we just look at the API call through here, and we look at the temperature, you'll see this is 66, 67, 71, 73, 70. So this is in Fahrenheit. So when we've done that, what's happened is that they've taken that centigrade And they've converted it back to Fahrenheit because everything else they have in Fahrenheit. So presumably they were an American business, and then they started going global, and then they actually had to start doing some conversions along the way. But since that's where everything they started from, they would have taken their data sets and moved them back so that they were normalized. Then when they return the information for when they do the app that they're doing, they can actually do a conversion through at that point in time. But the API call is going and getting the raw data off their server. So when it gets that raw data, the raw data is in Fahrenheit. So what I was doing is I suddenly thought, oh, it's all in Fahrenheit. So I suddenly converted all of the Fahrenheit across the whole of the table for all that we had. And so suddenly I had these few ones that I'd actually got through an API call converted to degrees centigrade. And then all of my degrees centigrade ended up being below zero. So it went crazy. And then I suddenly realized what was happening. So I need to change this from Fahrenheit into degrees C before I put it up into the database, because the other information that we've got in our database is from the controllers themselves, and so it's already in degrees C. So to do that, sorry, that's the first one. To do that, we've actually had to do, I've used a lambda function in here, which are quite cool, smart little things to do actually. I quite like them. I'm not that comfortable with them, but I love the concept of them. And I'm able to convert the temperature when it actually comes. So I've taken the API call, taken it into here and said, okay, then now convert that into degrees C from degree Fahrenheit. So that was a gotcha. I just didn't see that happening, and suddenly I was looking at these temperature lines and it was going degrees C, you know, like along here, degrees C, and then suddenly jumps right up to 70 and runs along at the top here. You're suddenly, what the hell's happening there? And that was the problem. So it was a matter of going back, finding where those ones were and actually going and cleaning them up. So and you can just look at, I just used this and actually just do time ranges and just check to see that the time ranges all were in where they were. So that was one method of doing it. So that was a bit of a gotcha on there of getting that degrees C to degrees F. So I've converted at that point in time, and then some of the calculations end up with long decimal places, so you then have to round them up to actually make sure that the temperatures are the same format as the other one. Now the reason why you want to do that formatting and rounding it up so that it's the same decimal place is when you put it up into the database cells for that column have a certain configuration. And so they'll say, oh, we'll accept anything with 2 decimal places or 1 decimal place. So if you end up sending something up there and it's got 2 decimal places, it's just going to bounce. It says, no, we're not going to accept that. Go away. And it just breaks. So we've got to make sure these things have happened. So the other one here is for this particular one. Oh, this is Hydro 2. What I've actually got to do is I've got to get the time delta and shift it back by 4 minutes. With the other one, that's Hydro 2, if we look at Hydro 1, 3, 4, 5, Hydro 1, we shift back forward by 1 minute, because if we looked at our time in the previous ones that we had, so if we look at Hydro 1 in the CSV format, you'll see these are all 1 minute too early, so we're going to move them 1 minute forward. The other one is 4 minutes later, so we're going to move it back by 4 minutes. So each one suddenly becomes specific for that particular controller. So at a certain point in time, the code has to be targeted specific for whatever was coming from which individual controller through here. So this is why I've ended up with this sort of like 3 lots of file things. So again, each one in time, this one, the first one, we actually just explode and we convert it into a CSV file. The next one we actually take and we are going to shift at one, convert from Fahrenheit to centigrade. We're going to, one of the things when this comes back from the API call, it gives the Unix time and it also gives normalized time. So we've actually got the 7th of January 2000 thing, but it's written 7th of January 2003 and then the stuff. So we've actually got to do a little bit of conversion onto that to convert that into a date time. And then what we've got to do is we can start deleting the columns that we don't want. So if we look at the columns that we got on there, we've got this Mac, we've got this CT time, we've got timestamp one here, and we've also got the index at the very beginning. So this is the unnamed 0, which is the index one, the timestamp, and a couple of the other ones that have just got empty data in or something, or stuff, and so we get rid of those. So what we end up with, so we drop all of those other ones through there, and then we print it out to a CSV again. So this one here has got the double O on the end. So if we just run this one and run that, I think it's the right day, and we come into here. So now we've got it a lot cleaner. We've actually got only the information that we actually require all the way through. Now you see some of these are 0, and that's because it's lamp, it's the light. So, and it's dark at night, and then suddenly we're getting a bit of light through here. Although there's a couple of ambiguous ones, whether the lights are on or off, I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure whether that's the lamps that are activated or not. But again, we're getting reasonably good clean data into here, and we've got a day or night, and this is just a switch as whether it's classified as a day or a night through there. So we've now got the data in the way that we wanted it. So at this point in time, we've got our date at the beginning, which we're going to be using as our index. When we're doing a lookup and they're suddenly saying, what was the temperature in this time range, like between Thursday the 3rd of June through to Saturday the whatever of June, and at 6 o'clock. You can actually just say, go and look up those time things and return me those particular data things that I want. I want the temperature, I want this, I want that. So this is looking quite neat. It's looking reasonably ordered all the way through. So this looks as if we're ready to push it up through a database. So these two things that we've done is basically a bit of cleaning that we're doing. The next part that we're going to look at is actually pushing it up into the database. So that's the next video along. I hope that's been of use to you. So we've basically taken the JSON that we've got from the API call, we've converted it into a CSV file so that, and at that point in time, we can also give that file, even though it's not clean, to other users to use. Or we can clean it up to the point where it's nice and tidy and just got all of this information, and we can give them access to this information. So this will open up very nicely into an Excel file, and they've got that data to use straight away. So it's now ready and cleaned and offset, so you see all of my hours. It's not 1 minute before or 1 minute after, it's all this and that and the other. It is exactly. So I've got 00 hours on there, well, so midnight, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to the hour before midnight on the next one, and then the next day starts at 00 through there. So great, we've now got a clean file that we can now do something with. So I'll stop there, and then we'll talk about uploading to the database on the next one. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you found that useful.